The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two fine co-hosts,
Nate Heininger
and Shane Kelly.
And this week we are talking about Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion.
Great name. Right out of the gates. The name alone. I've been wanting to play this game since it came out. And frankly, I think it is exclusively because that is a great name for a game.
Yeah, pretty much that was the thing that drew me to it as well. We've also had a number of folks request this, and
yeah,
it's unusual to get a game that is quite so short. This is literally an hour and a half or so.
Yeah, they estimate it to be about 2 to 5 hours.
That can't be right. Like,
that's what they say. They say in their FAQ 2 to 5 hours, depending on how good you are at figuring out puzzles. And I'm surprised that you rate it so fast, Raygan, because you are usually our resident puzzle dunce.
Yeah, I didn't find what puzzles. Like, this is not not really a puzzle dense thing. It's pretty breezy.
But I really do like what the devs said about their group, which is called Snoozy Kazoo. And they just say we make really, really dumb video games. I appreciate that. And they also say our goal is to make small, short, dumb as heck games with a strong emphasis on looking on the goofier side of life. They say there is enough serious content in the world. Let that be in games, movies, music, or even our lives in general. We want to provide an escape from that while respecting their time and abilities. So I'm on board 100% with that mission statement.
You know what? Yeah, I think I just saluted that entire description.
And if you consider wonderful. That as your metric for whether this game is good or not, then I think they knocked it out of the ballpark with this game. This is short and dumb as hell. So
it is really dumb.
Yeah. Target acquired.
Yeah.
So Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion is on the surface, I wanted to call it a Zelda-like, but it's so simplified versus a Zelda-like that it's almost more accurate to call it like an action adventure or an adventure with slight action.
Yeah. I think Zelda-like is still pretty apt, though. It's just imagine a 2D Zelda game where the puzzles are all incredibly simple and the combat is mostly skippable. But the framework of a 2D Zelda is still there.
It's absolutely the very reminiscent of maybe like the first 2 hours or so of a Zelda game. Like if you were comparing it to some of the more Zelda-like games that we've covered recently, think about stuff like maybe Death's Door, or I think we covered Sable, Hyper Light Drifter, a few other things like that. I mean, I'm maybe Minute,
I thought in a lot while playing this game.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to some of those kinds of games. And when you do that style of game in the kind of like full speed ahead, don't slow down for anything, like we're going to get in and out 2 hours full adventure kind of style, like you don't necessarily want to have a ton of mechanics or complexity. And I mean, this game kind of hits that pretty well. Like the setup here for Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Why don't I just go ahead and tell you about Turnip Boy, because he is adorable. Turnip Boy is a turnip with eyes and feet, and
tiny smiley mouth.
He sure does. And the very first thing that he does in the game, thereby fulfilling the title, is he commits tax evasion, or rather, he has committed tax evasion by not paying taxes on his greenhouse where he lives, and he is informed of this by the Onion Mayor, who has come to repossess his property. And that begins the kind of adventure where he is being directed by the mayor to various tasks that will help him repay his debt to society and to the onion-based government.
Yeah, and that really kicks off what the real gameplay loop of this game is. Onion Mare gives you a fetch quest. You go out on a tiny Zelda-like adventure. There may be some light block moving puzzles, some light combat. You get that item and bring it back to the mayor, and he sends you on another fetch quest. And all throughout this small, interesting world are other fetch quests that you accomplish in order to either rip up more documents, which is, I think, maybe the funniest part of this game, and also acquiring new hats. And so that is the whole game is basically this gameplay loop of completing fetch quests and solving minor puzzles and minor combat situations throughout. There are a few boss fights, but for the most part, this game is a delivery system for their jokes. And I think maybe the best part of the game is just its visual and sound quality are good.
It's great looking and it's really breezy to play. So, I mean, it's a very, it's just a light, funny, game experience that's going to be pretty straightforward and familiar for people our age who have played games a lot. And, you're going to make your way through it. By the time you get to the end, you'll be surprised. Like, wait, huh? That was it. But the actual like moment to moment gameplay is pretty straightforward. Let's kind of like boil it down. Like we said, it's kind of Zelda-esque, and the first thing you're going to do is going to get a sword in true Zelda fashion. The soil sword
that's growing out of the ground in a very Zelda moment, where you pull the sword out of a rock, right? But in this case, you actually have to water it, and it grows from some sort of sword plant.
It's dangerous to grow alone, or whatever.
God, I forgot they said that. That's really.
Or do you get the watering can first, and then the sword?
You get the watering can.
Yeah, you steal the watering can from an old man Lemon.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has that sort of like hub and spoke structure where as you go out on various fetch quests, you're coming back to the central town and talking to the onion, and he's giving you new directions. And as you do that, you get the sword, and that lets you chop down some plants, and now you can access a different sort of spoke of that hub and so on. It's a very simple structure, and throughout the whole thing, I never really felt lost. It's very has a good pace. It continues kind of like telling you to move ahead and keep going. And so, it breezed by for me in almost 2 hours, but under, I think, for me, total 2 hours.
I was surprised at first that there was no map, because at the very beginning, it kind of feels like the world might be pretty big. There's a lot of twists and turns in it, but it really isn't. It's a pretty small world.
Yeah, you can really only go a few places, and it is kind of open world in a sense, in that it's not really blocking you off, but you are really guided. If you return to the center, the hub is, the perfect center of everything is the onion, who's always going to tell you what to do. And out from there, if there is any branching to the paths at all, it is going to be blocked off by some vegetable or other, telling you not to go this way. And
it'll be directly like, we haven't. I think this game is really just a joke and visual delivery system, and it uses those opportunities it takes opportunity to make a joke at every opportunity, right? And so it's incredibly self-referential and just game referential. So it'll be like, you can't go this way. The mayor says you have to beat the game, whatever that means, or like, aren't my boxes perfectly blocking your way? Don't worry, they'll be gone later. It's a lot of humor like that.
I about its humor, like most of the time it did work for me, because a lot of the times it was just sort of playing on the inherent silliness of the Turnip Boy character and the sort of cast of vegetables around him. And a lot of that really was funny and did work for me. It does have this kind of very of the now internet humor to some of it. Right. Most of which kind of worked for me, like more than I kind of would have expected if you just describe it. These are the kind of jokes that for some reason, so here I'm about to ruin them for you. They worked better, I think, in the context. And then afterwards I was like, I don't know why I found that funny. Things like, for example, like there's a number of the vegetables talk about their phones, like where they're getting phones, and they're posting dances to Flip Flop. I'm like, okay, I don't know why I found that funny when I was playing through it. Now in reflection, I'm like, Flip Flop. Okay, got it. TikTok.
Well,
yep, got it. Cool.
It's the aesthetic, because I mean, there are really two aesthetics going on here in this game. So the first is a pretty well executed, like 8-bit, or I should say 16-bit, like adventure game look to the sprites and everything. And then there's a lot of talking to the various different vegetables, and that's what I found the most delightful, because they have that sort of Sanrio kawaii look.
That's a good comparison. They do have a kind of a Sanrio-ish kind of ness to them.
Yeah. And like the little conversations between the vegetables, you get the little squeak talk, and they wiggle around, and it is just, I mean, that part of it is super charming, and you're hearing the good music, and like as a whole, aesthetically together as an experience, like the whole thing just goes by so fast that, like, here we are, grumpy older podcaster boys, looking back and saying like, well, I don't know why was this funny, but if it was, though, it made me laugh.
It's true.
I thought this game was probably like 30% funny, but it takes a crack at
God,
every.
That's bleak. Go ahead. Sorry.
But if you are firing jokes in every interaction, that's still a lot of jokes individually.
Yeah,
that
is true. That is true.
And I think that, like, a lot of that stuff, like the flip flop and whatnot, like, wasn't super funny to me, but I bet it was funny to some people. And then there are other jokes that I thought were
there's
really funny.
There's a cherry in this game that just, I don't even know exactly what he's saying, but I looked it up and it's a JoJo reference. So I'm like, that's in here for the people who watch JoJo. I don't watch JoJo, so I didn't get that reference.
There's a lot of very extremely online humor. Like there's a piece of macaroni that does the like a vegetabilized version of the like 300 confirmed kills copy pasta. Oh, now I get it. He's a pasta.
It's pasta doing copy pasta.
That was actually. That was extremely good. I took some screenshots of that because I mean, it's the copy pasta. So here I am just reading the thing. But what the heck did you freaking say about me, you little turnip? I'll have you know I graduated at the top of my class in the pasta seals, and I've been involved in numerous secret raids on the barn. I have 300 confirmed kills, and it goes on for the entire duration of
Well, and that's where it's like
this, which is still funny to me somehow.
It is, but it also isn't. I mean, so much of this game is just a reference to another funny thing, and you're like, oh, that's fun to see this funny thing within this funny thing,
Yeah. All in all, I think I'm kind of cooler on the humor of this game than a lot of reviewers have been. Like I smiled and I chuckled a few times, but I was never like rolling. Whereas like Rock Paper Shotgun, their review of this is titled "Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, the funniest game I've ever played."
Yeah, it's a little hyperbole.
That's wow. Like, I think a lot of people connected with the humor a little more strongly than I did on this one.
But you're pretty online though. Like
I am. I'm really online, and this is not. This didn't 100% work for me. Like Nate's 30% is actually probably about right for me too. It's cute, but I was not rolling in the aisles.
If I may steal another, internet trope, there was a lot of moments that made me, forcefully shoot air out of my nose, but not a lot of heavy laughter. Not like, Stanley Parable, which we just did, which is
simply
deeply,
at every turn left me dying.
But that's like an existential dark humor, and this game is purely going for cheap, stupid laughs. And there were some really good ones. Like I really found it funny that all you could do with every document you found was rip it up. And the way that they set up the things that you're ripping up was sometimes very funny. Elaborate fetch quests that are resulting in you sending like a love letter to someone or whatever it might be. And it culminates in them giving you something that means a lot to them. and then you just rip it up
in front of them because
and like,
Turnip Boy's whole existence seems to be about the
chaos.
Joy of destroying documents.
Yeah, that stuff I thought was very funny. I did like there's a world building element to this game that I thought was interesting, and I would have loved to have seen explored even more, that sort of hints at why this world even exists. You find out pretty early that you are in New York City, United States, New York City. And there's all these references to humans, but you're a little turnip walking around. And then there's vegetables that are not sentient. And I liked that element of it. And they do some funny things and some interesting things like that. I don't know. Were either of you Adventure Time fans?
Oh yeah,
definitely love Adventure Time. I haven't seen the whole show, but I've been watching it with my son, and I've always thought it was, it does. I think that's a good analogy because you have the like a lot of the humor of the setting here comes from the trying to lend trying to take what basically would be a storybook fantasy kind of setup and then twist it a little bit so that it actually fits more into a sci-fi framework. That's the same thing that Adventure Time kind of does over time.
Right.
And they're really going for it here all at once in 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, it's Adventure Time, does seasons of subtle hints at what the world looked like, before, and this game has within a half an hour, you kind of understand what happened. But I liked that element of it. And, I thought that was the sort of stuff that carried me through it and was, really fun. I agree with Raygan in that, like, it wasn't the funniest game I've ever played, and probably not even close. But I think that it probably is for some people who really love that, internet culture humor. This isn't the first game that we've done that like leans into that. Although it was interesting to me is that this game seemingly was at least finished or maybe crafted entirely during the pandemic, because there are multiple references to just dealing with the pandemic in the game, including like a face mask with a note that says like "stay 6 feet away." I'm like, I don't need that right now.
I don't know that for sure about the development timeline, but it certainly makes sense. The game was released in April of 2021. So given
hard to imagine
the game, they maybe were working on this before the pandemic, but they were probably working on the majority of it during.
Yeah.
So it definitely feels like it has a little bit of that influence. It's also probably worth talking just about like the like combat and mechanics side of this too. Like we briefly touched on it. You get a sword. You have it doles out little tools to you pretty quickly. You get you have a watering can from the very beginning, and it does a few things throughout the game. You can water bomb plants that grow bombs and then kick the bombs. You can water plants that create little teleporting portals, which then, as long as you're watering them, will create teleporting portals. And then later on, you get a potted teleporting plant where you can create your own portals, which was a mechanic I was definitely not expecting to see in this game. The sort of, place an orange and blue portals. Yeah. It's used to some good, but not particularly surprising effect here. I need to get a bomb from point A to point B. I'll set 2 portals down. There you go. That kind of thing. But fun, nice, cute little mechanic. None of them, however, really felt like they were fully explored. It is a really short game. It's like 2 hours or less. So that's not a huge surprise, but the combat never moves beyond hold sword out and bump into thing to do it damage. It stays really simple throughout. All the enemies just sort of slowly move back and forth or move directly towards you. None of them have interesting or complicated behaviors. The puzzles with things like the watering can or the portal mechanic were all sort of like the sort of thing you would see within the first hour and a half of a game, right? This is an hour and a half long game. It never really gets enough time or enough sort of wind in its sails to start throwing you interesting puzzles. So
I think the only place where it really tries to get mechanically interesting is the boss fights, which I think we should probably just spend a little while talking about the boss fights.
Yeah. I mean, you can literally. I found it most effective to just run past all of the enemies for the majority of this game instead of take the extra time to sort of fumbly line up, kill the snails. Although there are some funny things about killing the snails. You got to look out; they're vegetarian, which is a real problem in a land of vegetables.
That was honestly that was a good chuckle for me. Watch out for the snails; they are vegetarians.
But really, like, the combat is so simple, and I found kind of annoying that, like, I just found it more fun to play this game by just running past every enemy, and there was never any downside to that. So it's like I can spend more time sort of awkwardly lining up my little sword, or I can just run right past everyone. But the bosses, obviously, you have to fight them. These are, you're locked in a room with it.
The bosses sort of scale up progressively in like their level of mechanical complexity. And if you've played games like this, there's not going to be anything too shocking. I think some of my favorites include the Rotten Cat Apple, which was apple that was a cat that also had worms in it, and the worms would be coming out, and there'd be the ads. There was a stag that had eaten some radioactive ooze, and then really I think in total there are the two I just mentioned. There's the very first one I did, which was King Pig.
Yeah, maybe like 5 or 6.
And then there's Liz, and then the final boss. Liz, can we just talk about Liz for a second? That's a weird boss.
My God. Yeah, that boss was really badly designed.
So I think some setup too. Like, at least, for me, the bosses were not difficult. Like, I think I don't remember dying on any of them. It's more exciting because they're moving around, they're doing things, but they're always very simple. And then you get to die, Liz.
It doesn't matter. You're
it doesn't
coming
matter.
right back into the to the boss arena.
But Liz,
Liz,
one of the penultimate boss.
Yeah, and the only hard boss in the game.
Yeah, and hard in an annoying way where you're just like, those. At least for me, like, if you die to a boss where you never felt like you even really had any control over the moment, you just get like stun locked and then killed immediately. Like, that's not very fun. And more importantly, though, is that it was completely out of nowhere. Again, most of the bosses had seemed still to me to be more like fun set pieces, but not necessarily challenging combat. It was just like, oh, it's fun, you're fighting a big pig. Ooh, it's fun, you're fighting a big cat, And then all of a sudden you have this like tight spaced boss that has multiple AoE attacks, is able to grab and slow you down.
Yeah, it has like all these. It has a gooey arm that will shoot out and latch onto you, pulling you closer to her. She will emit a puddle of toxic slime that will damage you if she pulls you into it. She will send out a giant slimy fist to slam down on you. That's dealing huge damage.
Yeah,
and then sometimes just dash at you and hit you with a pipe wrench. So
and I felt like I had barely fought in this game, and then all of a sudden I am, cornered by a really challenging fight that was kind of colored my whole take on the game. When
it kind of did, especially since it's so close to the end, it just sort of like soured me on things a little bit. I did eventually get past it, and what's strange was, like, I was stuck on this boss. What I usually do when I'm really stuck on a boss is, like, I try not to let it like ruin my experience, and I'll just go like look up a playthrough of that boss and see if somebody maybe has some ideas about approaches that I haven't tried, right? So I pulled up some videos of people fighting this boss. Almost all of them were people trying the same things I was trying and failing. And then in a YouTube comment on like the third one of these videos that I looked at, somebody said, this doesn't really show what you need to be doing. You just need to be
lighting her on fire,
lighting yourself on fire, and then going and touching her while she's not standing in a puddle. And after I realized that was what you needed to do, which is not the kind of thing you expect, like this was like the game had in not long before this given you a way to light yourself on fire without losing health. And so I should have probably put that together.
Yeah, they did spend a while in this game. Like a lot of the areas leading up to Liz, you have to light yourself on fire in order to progress. So you have to light yourself on fire and burn your way through a door, stuff like that.
And then like use your own body to carry a flame to burn something around you, that kind of thing.
They never trained you. Yeah, they never trained you that a combat moment is going to require anything other than just walking up and stabbing.
Right.
Yeah. So it was a pretty, and the main thing that Nate was mentioning about it, like spending a really long time stun locking you, was the thing that really made this demoralizing. You know, if you're on fire, she can't grab you, and so she can't stun lock you for the most part. But if you're not on fire, then she grabs you, and you've pretty much lost, because then she just sort of like holds you still, or you get bumped until you die.
Well, I think we've probably crapped on the Liz boss.
Yeah, the Liz boss fight was absolutely
one more point though, and this is where I had not had this problem yet, but most modern games, once you've watched a boss's intro cutscene one time, you don't have to watch it again every time you fight them. Mm-hmm. And even though it's only like 15 seconds, when you are doing a boss fight, 25 times, watching that same little cutscene over and over and over it just felt like icing on the cake for how annoying this was. And
when you're really mad at a boss, that extra few seconds really ruins
it piles on, so I just, that's a quality of life thing that I feel like most games have adopted at this point. So seeing a game that had been made in the last year that like didn't have that was pretty surprising.
And that's one of the small ways, like things like that, and just a lot of other little things about this game are things that made me think, like, I wonder if this game originally had ambitions of being a larger project with more to it.
I think I can point to yes on that. They did a DLC, and I mean, the version you have has the DLC. I chose kind of not to engage with the extended content that happens kind of after the end of the game, which apparently tries to turn this into kind of a boss rush roguelike, which, given my experience with the combat in the game so far, I was not interested in.
Thanks.
But yeah, so they have expanded it. I think, maybe if they wanted to keep going in that direction, I think their aesthetic and I think their like the actual controls and the design of the levels really good, and the music were all really good. So maybe that's something that they return to that well in the future, and I'll be down to check it out.
Yeah, I think if this were a long, like, I don't often come into this show like advocating for games to be longer, but this thing is like almost not even 2 hours. I think if this had been a little bit longer game, they probably could have left Liz on the cutting room floor. They probably would have had more time for other stuff that would have been more interesting. Maybe a new combat ability or something to spice things up a little bit.
Yeah. Or make Liz just another series of increasingly difficult bosses where her sort of difficulty spike fits into a curve of difficulty. Up until that, it felt like the game was saying combat is just this game has to have combat because all of these games do. And it felt like it was a sort of a passive element to the game. You could skip most of it, and then you get cornered by a really obnoxious boss.
Liz is not the only issue that I have with the bomb bunker area. I'll say honestly, the whole game is pretty. If it weren't for the bomb bunker area, I would have very few problems with the game overall. But remember in the bomb bunker, did you guys pick up the last slice of pizza?
Yeah,
item. I think you have to. So it's. I don't know if you missed it or not. I think it is optional, but anyway, it's just in
the fridge.
Yeah. And you pick it up. It's an item that you can use like any of the other kind of holdable items. But when you use it, it restores 1/4 of a heart, and you can use it unlimited times. I was sure that was going to be something that was relevant. And I spent with Liz a lot of time trying that out, but it's a pure trap. It's a total red herring. I can't think of a single time in this game where using the pizza slice to regain health would have been better than just like leaving the room and walking back in and smashing some crates to find hearts.
Weird.
So yeah,
I used it a little bit on the last boss. It's a big open room, and the boss has a ton of downtime. So I would switch to the pizza slice and, have a few bites while he was just shooting his goo everywhere.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, I mean, but in general, like, this does feel like the rough.
Why are we laughing at
area?
That?
I'm sorry.
Of the game. But shall we just go to final thoughts?
I'm sorry. I'm cutting this out.
Yeah, Jesus.
So let's go ahead and hit some final thoughts on Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. I'd say the highlights on this game are Turnip Boy himself. Turnip Boy himself is a absolute menace to society. He must be stopped.
Contender for dirtbag of the year for sure. I mean, he came out last year, but I think our award series just looks at the year in games for us. And so
I think you get a lot of extra points as a dirtbag in contention for dirtbag of the year if you are adorable but also a total piece of shit.
Yeah.
So
we didn't talk. Turnip Boy doesn't talk except for
ellipses.
But he certainly conveys a lot because everyone is interacting with him.
One of the funniest things about the game, honestly, is conversations with Turnip Boy.
He just responds in ellipses, 3 question marks, or 3 exclamation marks. Except for every once in a while, he'll respond with like some sort of emoji or did you all find the time he does say one English word?
No.
It is when an anime fan shows their own anime drawing to Turnip Boy, and you rip it up and tell him to stop.
So. Okay, that's pretty funny. But yeah, Turnip Boy himself, wonderful, excellent, good boy.
You get the most characterization on Turnip Boy simply out of the fact that every time you find a piece of paper that even has the word tax on it, he will immediately tear it to shreds, which is that's perfect. It's great. Yeah. I love it. Anarchy. I for one I'm ready for a game in which a cartoon turnip has a more serious discussion of taxation. But maybe the world's not ready for that yet, and that's okay.
The sequel is going to be Turnip Boy Eats the Rich.
Yeah,
no, that's a game I would play.
Yeah, I would dip back in for Turnip Boy Eats the Rich. So anyone else have any final thoughts on the game that you'd like to share? Favorite moments?
I don't know if I think I've shared a lot of my favorite moments so far, but I think this game was kind of a mixed bag for me. I think ultimately I enjoyed it, and I'm really glad that we played it. I've been wanting to play it for a while. I think the humor misses more than it hits, but when it hits well. And ultimately, the best part of the game, I think, is the design of it, like the visuals and the music. I think are great, and so it's a delightful little experience. I think I got it in one of the 100 bundles that have gone out in the last year. So you might have this game already if you even if you're not aware of it. So I'd say check it out. It's fun. But
it ends with a pretty fun song about Turnip Boy.
It does.
That's going to be my suggestion is favorite moments. The end credits song is
it's good.
Very, very good. Top notch.
Yeah.
So I'd say I would definitely recommend folks pick this up if you see it on sale or you have an opportunity to snag it in a bundle or something like that. I think, I'm not the kind of like value gamer or whatever, and hey, it's your money. But I do feel like this is a pretty slight and pretty mixed experience for its like standard $15 MSRP, I'm kind of glad I picked this up on sale, but I'm still glad I picked it up, if that makes sense. So I would give this sort of a guarded recommendation, a sort of a half-staff thumbs up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Half-staff thumbs up.
Well, when we have decided and issued our our verdict on a game, and we have a little time left at the end of the episode, we do like to dip into some of the other things going on in the world and in our lives that are making us happy with a little segment I like to call Things I'm Happy About.
Classic segment.
Ruin this every time. What's making you happy this week, Nate?
Yeah, so I have finally started a game that has been recommended to us by at least one person in the Discord for years now. I think before we even had a Discord. So shout out to the Sweat.
What up, Sweat?
Valiantly recommending a game called Ibb Obb.
You finally checked it out. I actually downloaded it on my Switch, and then I never did, like an idiot.
Yeah, we've had a couple false starts at playing this game, and it is a couch co-op. Well, actually, it has online play now. I think when it launched, It did not, but it does have online now. But it is a puzzle platformer that basically deals with gravity. I actually did not play the Portal multiplayer, but I think there's some comps to that style of puzzle. But imagine a flat, 2D platformer world instead of the rich environment of a Portal game. But basically, it's a co-op game that you are each controlling little blobs, and you're moving from left to right. There's a variety of gravity-based puzzles that have you might be on face up on the top part of the world, and it's split across the middle, and the other player goes underneath, and gravity sort of switches, and so now they are upside down on the other side. I don't know if I explained that well, but look it up. You'll see what I mean. But it does some fun stuff. So the reason I compare it to Portal is because it messes around with that dueling gravity. You'll get these things where you have to basically jump from the gravity pulling you one way. You fall down, and then gravity pulls you back the other way. And you can get that sort of cycle going that Portal 2 did a lot, where you build up speed by going through portals until you get fast enough that you can launch yourself into an area that you might not have been able to do before. But now it's co-op, and you might need your friend to, you stand on their shoulders, and then they jump, and then you jump, and you can get to an area. And I don't know if you like co-op games and you like puzzle games. I think it's good. We're not super far yet, but I wanted to talk about it because we've talked about doing this game for the show for 5 years now, and finally playing it. And I think it would be good for the show, whether we do it or not. I don't know, but it's been fun so far. So also playing it on Switch.
Awesome. Yeah. My thing is also sort of game related, but it's more just I got a package in the mail that I've been excited about getting for a long time.
Wow.
So if you're a retro game enthusiast, if you're the kind of person who likes playing old games on real old hardware, you're probably already familiar with Everdrives, which is a brand name of flash cartridge for various consoles. There's a flash cart maker named, goes by the handle Krikzz, Krikkzz, I think. And he is a brilliant guy. He sort of invented a lot of stuff that is standard on these, and he still sort of makes if you're going to get a good flash cart for almost any system, it's probably one of his Everdrives. And he is Ukrainian. And so all of the Everdrives have always been made in Ukraine. He lives in Ukraine. He designs them in Ukraine. Depending on where you buy them from, he ships them to you from Ukraine. And as you can imagine, things have been a bit fucked up for Krikzz for a little while. Yeah, he had to move his whole operation from one side of Ukraine to another. Anyway, when I saw that he had done a limited restock of some models, I was immediately moved to buy a couple of Everdrives that I hadn't, that I've been thinking about buying, but hey, Crix got his shop up and running. He's moved his whole operation from one side of Ukraine to the other. I want to buy something. I want to send him money. I want to buy some Everdrives. And so I got two. I got the Game Boy Everdrive X5 and the Game Gear Everdrive X7. The way he does his numbering is a little confusing, but basically, depending on how much you want to spend, he has multiple Everdrives for different systems that have different features. And in general, there's like an X3 that's like the cheap budget one. There's usually an X5, which is like the like nicer one, and the X7, which usually has some extra fancy features. So for example, on the Game Gear Everdrive X7 that I have here, it has an in-game menu and save states, on console save states, which is really cool.
Nice.
Whereas the X5 Game Boy one doesn't have the save states, but it still has an in-game menu, and it's a pretty nice little flash cart. Anyway, it's my first time having a Game Gear Everdrive. I've had one for the Game Boy before, but it was one of his very first models of it, and it was really flaky about like which SD cards it would support, and you had to jump through all kinds of hoops to get it to work. And it had been sitting on my shelf because I wasn't, it had become really annoying to use. So having a nice brand new one with a lot of nice features is nice, but the Game Gear Everdrive has been a revelation because there are a lot of games for the Game Gear. Tons, way more than you'd think. I had a Game Gear when I was a kid.
We only ever had 5 games for it.
Yeah, we only ever had like a handful of games for it. And going through and exploring some of the Game Gear library that I've never seen, even the American stuff, there's a lot of really great stuff, but especially if you add to that the Japanese catalog, a lot of which it doesn't really require a lot of reading. Arcade style stuff plays just fine even if you don't know Japanese, and there's a huge library of great stuff, a lot of conversions from the Master System. It's really neat. So if you haven't ever bought an Everdrive before, check out Crix's site, see if maybe he's apparently like already back in production making new stuff. These things are really great, they're high quality, and they say made in Ukraine on every single one if you want to feel good about yourself about just pumping a little extra money into the Ukrainian economy when it definitely needs it. Go for it. I would recommend all of his products. They're great.
Rad.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I have a couple of games that I want to talk about. One of them, I'll briefly bring up and then drop because this is my official lobbying effort to get it on the show, which is I am very nearly at 100% on Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which what an incredible game. My son and I have been playing through that. We have unlocked every ability. We have finished every level. We've very nearly saved every Waddle Dee. This game is terrific. My son is 4. He plays as Kirby, and I play as Kirby's erstwhile companion, Bandana Waddle Dee. It's wonderful when you can see his skills growing and all that. It's been wonderful. But the game I will so that hopefully I can convince my co-hosts to play. It comes in, I think, at about 11 hours if you are a adult, and probably a lot more if you are playing with a 4-year-old in the driver's seat. But the real game I want to talk about is Knotwords by Zach Gage. So this is you're probably familiar with Zach Gage from a lot of his other games. Like he did that really terrific version of Sudoku, right? And what other things has he done? I can't remember.
Really Bad Chess.
Yes. So he worked
on Ridiculous Fishing, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So and he puts his name. I love it when a developer puts their name on their product. This is Zach Gage and Jack Schlesinger. Probably saying that wrong. Sorry, Zach and Jack. Enjoy editing, Raygan. But this one's pretty great. It's basically a crossword puzzle Sudoku hybrid where that has supplanted Wordle in my kind of daily play. And it has daily puzzles and these like monthly puzzle books. And for the daily puzzles, it has like a mini and a classic and a twisted version. But the basic idea with these is you have a grid that is essentially crossword-esque. You have to make words across and down, and they're tightly packed. So you're really having to make sure that everything lines up. And within that grid, rather than having typical crossword clues, you have dotted line boxes that are anywhere from like 2 to 5 letters ish. And within that dotted line box, it'll tell you the letters that appear in that box. But the boxes are not the words. The boxes are sometimes like T-shaped or like a L-shaped, or cross between multiple words. And so you're really having to puzzle out where to place these letters. And the UI is excellent. There's a lot of really great affordances for doing this with one hand. You can move a little virtual cursor to select. You can do different kind of swipes and things like that to say what direction you're typing in and things like that. And the puzzles are just really clever. It's got a big vocabulary that it's using, really sometimes interesting words. You can pull up definitions of any word that you see, and it does some nice things like kind of lightly filling in letters that are kind of likely to be placed when you've used all but 1 or 2 of the letters within a box. It's a really, really fun word game. There's not that much else to say about it except for the fact that it gives you times that, your completion time for each one. I have bought a year subscription for this game for like $5, and or you can buy an unlimited like eternal subscription for like $11, something like that. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, it has replaced my Wordle habit. Me and my wife are competing to see who can finish these games faster every day, and she's beating me every time, unfortunately. But
I've
it
been
is great.
hearing about this as well, and it does seem really cute. I assume you're playing on the iOS version?
Yeah, the only downside, I am playing on iOS. The only downside I've found to it is it doesn't sync my progress between my iOS devices, so I have to only play on my phone, not on my iPad.
Okay, that's a little annoying. I saw this pop up on Steam, and I was sort of surprised to see it as a Steam game. But
it's
I guess
very much more of a mobile kind of thing for me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. Like, should I get this on my Steam Deck? But then I was like, nah, this is a phone game. So yeah, I'm sold actually. Now that you mention it, I'll probably do the 1 year subscription or something too.
I wasn't able to come on the show last week.
That was
but,
Raygan cramming in his Steam Deck.
It was Mark, I think, tweeting about it that helped me find this. So shout out to Mark.
All right, thank you.
Well, I still play Wordle every day, and I'm enjoying it. But I'm
like
always,
a chump. Get on the Knotwords train, buddy. Here we're all boarding.
I can be on 2 trains. 2 trains.
Like some kind of Jackie Chan scene.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. What's left to do? Outro. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net, which is where you'll find all the stuff. You'll find our contact form. You'll find our back episodes. You'll find our searchable show notes page. You'll find a link to our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame, which is how you can support the show. But you can also join our Discord. Every patron, at even just $1 a month, gets immediate access to our Discord, which is where we talk about the show. We plan episodes. We talk about what's coming up. And we would be very happy to have you there. It's also a great place to suggest games to us. If you would like to, for example, suggest games like Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion or Ibb Obb. One of those we got to fairly shortly after it was suggested, and one of those we took 5 years and only glancingly touched on it, but that's okay.
What an endorsement. What an endorsement to get on that.
Sorry to the sweat once again.
By bringing it up in this way, you are effectively shaming us into playing this game, Raygan. So I guess I will download it.
All right. Sorry, everyone. So the highly recommend.
Thank you for the recommendation. I don't want to. Hey, if you're out there, the sweat loyal listener, thanks for the rec, and I'll check it.
Seriously. Sorry, it sometimes takes us a long time to get around to things. Schedules being what they are, and
cut all of this.
No. Let's see. You can also find us on Twitter @_shortgame, and you can find me on Twitter @RayganK. That's RayGanK. Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter @NateSTL.
And Shane, where can people find you?
I'm over on Twitter at 8BitShane.
And listeners, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.